Didn't know you were going to be podcasting with Steve Jobs today, did you?
Or Elizabeth Holmes.
I suppose I do bear probably a stronger resemblance to her.
All right. Should we do it?
Let's do it.
Hello, I'm Izzy.
And I'm Jessica.
And welcome back to The Greatest Genre. Season 2, baby.
Season 2. Feels good. We are back better than ever.
Obviously.
Even though it is now winter outside.
Mm-hmm. And disclaimer, we are both a bit ill for this episode, so yes, you might hear some coughing.
We've been recovering from, whatever it is that's going around. Mm-hmm. This is tea in here, in case anybody was suspecting otherwise. If you are here joining us for the first time, then welcome. We are so happy to have you, and we are even more overjoyed if you are coming back to us after having listened to all of season 1.
Thank you so much if you are still with us. We know these can be long episodes as well.
Means everything to us.
So in preparation for a launch of A House of Flame and Shadow, we are pivoting over to the Crescent City series so we can refamiliarize ourselves with the world, the characters, and of course, most importantly, the theories.
The anticipation is killing me.
I know.
Killing me.
I'm equally nervous and excited.
I'm just terrified. I'm just really scared. So since this is episode 3 of season 2, you probably already know this, but just in case you're diving in for the first time starting with episode 3, we are doing season 2 a little bit differently. Instead of a chronological chapter by chapter analysis of the story, we are doing topic-based episodes, deep dives, if you will. Deep.
Shout out to Binge Mode.
Last episode, we talked about our core characters. Mm-hmm. We talked about our main girls, Bryce and Danica, and our leading males, if you will. And that was great. That was great.
It was so much fun.
It was great, but I am so excited for our episode today. And so our next 2 episodes actually are kind of a pair. They're sort of complementary
part
episodes.
1 and part 2. Today is going to be
our
Jesiba.
Yes.
Aidas.
Yes.
And the Autumn King.
King.
Also, how do you pronounce his name? Einar or Ainir?
Say
Eeyore.
For some reason, I was really hoping and afraid that you were going to say Aidas. But I think that's because I've been doing too much House of the Dragon reading.
Oh, which, by the way, that trailer comes out tomorrow. But it won't be by the time that this is live for you guys.
What?
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have told you.
I saw the posters got posted today. Oh my God. Okay. Digress. Yes.
And then part 2 of the supporting characters episode is going to be...
Yeah, if we didn't mention that, this 2-part episode is about the supporting cast of characters. Of course, there are so many. We're going to do some honorable mention shout-outs as well because there are seriously so many incredible characters in these books. But yes, today we are diving into Jesiba, Aidas, and Autumn King. And then... on our next episode, we are going to be talking about Fury Axtar, Ethan Hallstrom.
Hot.
And my girl, Lydia Caravos.
Okay, I always thought it was Savos, so we're going to have to discuss that as well.
I'm going to let you know that I say it both ways in my brain, and I just sort of rolled the dice, and it came out Caravos.
Okay.
But we can say Servos if you want.
We'll discuss before then. Okay, so as a reminder, this will contain spoilers for both the Crescent City series and the Akatar series, and probably the Throne of Glass series as well.
Just so, really the SJM
universe.
We're so
unfortunately,
sorry.
If you have not read her completed works, we cannot advise that you listen on because we're going to reveal stuff that happens in all of the books, basically. Use this time to read. Also, we're so jealous that you haven't read it yet.
And come back to us. These books are so gripping. You're going to finish it. You're going to tear through them.
You're going to want to devour any content you can find about them.
We are here for your Crescent City book hangover.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That is what we're here for.
A reminder to please keep things kind in the comments. We love this community. We love interacting with everyone, and we can always disagree while being kind to one another.
Yes.
We can disagree on which Fae is finest, or in this case, which shifter angel or fallen angel
which veneer.
Okay, and then one last reminder, you can follow us on Instagram at @the_greatest genre, on Twitter at greatest genre, email us at thegreatestgenre@gmail.com. We are on TikTok at the greatest genre. And I believe that is everything. You can also listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts, all the usual places. So, Jessica,
Isabel,
let us go into Midgard, across the Eastros, and into Lunathion for our House of Earth and Blood and House of Sky and Breath deep dive.
Okay,
let's start it off with Jesiba or Jesiba.
I say Jesiba.
And I feel like I also say that, but sometimes I switch unintentionally.
I feel that actually I can provide, being named Jessica.
You can provide some guidance.
I feel that it really depends on the number of S's.
Okay.
Are there one or two?
I was actually removing some of your S's because there's one.
There's only one?
Yes.
Then I think it is Jesiba.
Okay. That, I agree. I agree.
Because if you removed one of the S's from my name,
you'd be Jessica?
I feel as though it would change the pronunciation. I don't know that I would go straight to Jessica. I don't know that it would go. Yes.
Not Roja.
No.
Okay,
Jesiba
cool.
Roga.
Okay, we're on the same page. Our resident 400-year-old sorceress.
Enchantress.
Enchantress.
Who, just like very casually on the side, is harboring like the largest deposit of contraband knowledge.
Literally
like,
known
ever.
To Feykind? Veneerkind?
Ever. Just like to anybody.
So
ever.
she has the remaining Library of Pathos, which we talked about in our episode 1.
Yes.
And that is housed beneath the floors of Griffin. Is it Griffin Antiques or Antiquities?
Antiquities. Jesiba is not an antiquer.
Well, I mean, the books are kind of antique. You could say they are 15,000 years old and at the minimum.
I would call those relics. Of a bygone era. But also, once again, just super forbidden.
Yeah, and
super forbidden.
We'll definitely get into that in this episode on how she's just allowed to keep being alive in the second book when the Asteri definitely now know about said illegal library full of things they don't want people knowing.
Very, very publicly unveiled.
Yeah.
At the summit.
In front of every single powerful Veneer. Basically, there's even been mentioned in the book.
And Sandriel even looks at Jesiba and makes some kind of threat about, when he's done dispatching your half-breed. I'm sure she called Bryce some kind of nasty name.
Slut.
She's like, they're gonna come for you, or like they're gonna burn everything.
And newsflash, the Asteri do not come for Jesiba. In fact, she's very much free and fucking two Veneer gentlemen in the background when Bryce video chats her in book 2. Maybe it was book 1. I can't remember, but Jesiba's getting it.
Jesiba really doesn't seem to have to answer to anybody except for apparently the Underking.
Yes, that is some evidence that she is like the emissary to the Underking.
Because she attends the summit as the representative of the House of Flame and Shadow, which is interesting. And we actually should probably back up a little bit. I jumped a little bit ahead but I'm just, the contraband is a huge massive detail. But so what we know about her is that when we meet, she's actually one of the first characters we meet besides Bryce and Danica. And she's introduced almost immediately.
Yep.
And she is a presence in the story from the jump all the way through.
Even though she's not physically in a lot of the book.
I don't think we ever get an in-person physical interaction with Jesiba except for the summit and then that very final sort of epilogue sequence with Aidas.
But I was gonna say I was thinking it through, and I don't think that Bryce and Jesiba are actually ever in the same room in these two books. Only via phone.
Not that we get to see.
But
she. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna keep talking about things we know about her.
Yes,
you summed it up great in the notes. She defected from the House of Flame and Shadow.
Well, she was born a witch. She defected from Earth and Blood to Flame and Shadow.
Yes, that's what I meant. Thank you.
Yes, she is now answers only to the Underking, which is somebody that I would not personally choose to work for.
Sounds scary is scary. The Underking.
Yeah. Looks like could kill you.
He's like, what, 10 feet
Could
tall,
kill you.
has brown teeth.
Yuck,
Sucks
by
the
the
first
way.
light out of people.
Just really
Sorry,
gross.
second light. Ew.
I
Disgusting.
wouldn't. Yeah, I
On
don't know
many
what
levels.
she's doing there.
But the Underking does have this one line in, I believe it is Sky and Breath, when he is talking to Rune and Bryce and Hunt, and he says, I do not know her by that name, because Bryce, I think, says something about, you know Jesiba, you gave her death marks, and he's like, I don't know her by that name, but yes, I know of her. I think that
mystery.
so much mystery.
Shrouded in mystery is Jesiba, as are many of the women in the Crescent City world, which we love. We love a mysterious woman.
Totally. Jesiba to me gives like massive Amryn vibes, like the fact that she just knows so much more than we. Obviously, like that's going to be a main theme in this conversation, is that we're going to get so much more of Jesiba in book 3 and how she plays into this bigger story as a whole.
I hope so.
I'll be upset if we don't.
There
I feel
is
like
such a huge question mark for me, and I say this every single episode. I have no idea what to expect as far as point of views go. I mean, we know we get Lydia, and I'm going to talk next episode about how very excited I am for that. I don't think anything is guaranteed.
What you said in the previous episode really upset me when you were like, we may just not get Bryce at all.
I think it's a very serious possibility. I think she might deny us.
She might Tower of Dawn us.
She's done it before. And Tower of Dawn ended up being one of my favorite books. I think it's my second favorite book in the entire Throne of Glass series.
Damn, that's a big statement.
I know.
Behind Kingdom of Ash.
Obviously.
Obviously.
I actually think it goes backwards in descending order for me. Like, my favorite is the last one, and then my second favorite is the second to last one.
All the way back to Throne of Glass. I mean, she was young when she wrote those. The writing improved.
But it's just, I think it's just because the story just kept getting better.
And richer. And all the characters.
I have no notes. I have no notes. Throne of Glass is perfect if you haven't read it. If you haven't read Throne of Glass yet, actually, don't read it until after you read House of Flame and Shadow, because you're going to need a hangout. You're going to need something.
Yeah.
And what I will tell you is this. The ending of Throne of Glass, because it is a completed series, will leave you so satisfied and, like, uplifted.
Yes. I can agree with that.
I would absolutely encourage. That's what I did.
Like, you have a book hangover, but in the best way possible, because you're just so happy
and
that you got to
everything is
experience the
resolved.
content. Yes.
I'm having a lot of trauma from cliffhangers right now.
Jessica finished Iron Flame today.
I finished Iron Flame this morning.
We're not going
to. I'm not even. I'm not even prepared to talk about it.
So let's go back to the library. You have some good notes about this. So the Library of Pathos.
Yes.
Which is the library in the basement, was in the basement of Griffin
Antiquities. I was going to say,
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about the scene where this reveal happens, because I think there's a lot of small details about it that are very significant. First of all, is that Micah is the one who comes down, and he realizes what he is looking at and what he is surrounded by almost instantly. And he also looks at Bryce and says, I know that you know also what this is. And the third thing about it is that there are a couple of books, one in particular, that we have been introduced to before. And that is, of course,
The Book of Breathings.
The Book of Breathings. Now, the Library of Pathos is all that is left of the greatest library that was on Midgard before the Asteri
got there. So
got
this was
to the planet.
Books full of information that humans had written for the most part.
Right. And you can imagine, it was giving, to me, it really reminded me of the Library of Alexandria. And there was just so much knowledge that mankind had discovered and documented, and they had made massive advances in engineering, in science, and so much of it was lost. I mean, historians have documented that the destruction and the loss of knowledge from that historical event, the burning of that library,
put us back.
They think it eventually led in a lot of ways to the Dark Ages, because so much knowledge was just lost that once the people who still retained that knowledge died, it was just gone. because there was no record of it anymore. And I think that that's a very similar situation to what happened when the Asteri came. They defeated, and Micah says to Bryce, was it Micah or is it Rigelus that says to Bryce, the humans made their final stand at the Library of Parthos?
I'm pretty sure that was Rigelus.
And they knew they were going to lose, but they were giving the priestesses time to save whatever they could. And the fact that all of this has ended up in Jesiba's care, and Jesiba's care alone.
I think that just, I mean, and there are theories all over the internet.
It's not scattered everywhere. It is all in one place.
And she totally, I think that she is able to collect these from, I don't think that she would have been able to get all of these books from just Midgard. I think Jesiba knows a way in and out of this world.
I don't think that's off base at all.
And I think that similarly to Fury, who we'll discuss in the next episode, I also think that Fury has a way to get in and out.
Because they're always out of town.
Yeah.
They're always out of town.
Out of commission.
They're always just out of town and out of reach, and everybody's got cell phones.
Everybody has cell phones, and Jesiba just knows too much and that collection is too vast
and
in order for it to just come from one world.
And also,
I mean, we have evidence of it in a different world, and it's in what can only be assumed a similar-ish time period. We don't know how exactly time and space works in between the Akatar world of Prithian and Midgard, but seeing as these books were not written too far apart from each other, and they both make cameos, more than a cameo in Akatar. She had to be able to get that from Prithian.
I think you are absolutely sniffing down the correct trail there. And also, it makes sense if she can slip between worlds. It would make sense that the Asteri are having a tough time bringing her in for questioning.
Totally. I wonder if they knew about the library. And this wasn't clear to me when I read it, and I'm wondering if you're picking up what I didn't. Do the Asteri know about the library before the big reveal at the end of Earth and Blood, or do they only know now because it was? I guess we don't know.
It's unclear to me. I don't think we have a definitive answer.
I think they might not have, because when I was researching Jesiba a little bit, I found out that she powers Griffin and Tucadides with a gasoline generator rather than use the city's first light grid. So it's off.
Well, and now we know. Because now it's off.
So I feel like they maybe didn't know about
grid
it until the end. But I mean, I don't know.
Well, it's certainly not beyond Declan Emmett's reach, so somebody knew what was going on in there.
No, but it's super exciting stuff. I can't wait to hear more about the library in the next book. I think it's going to make because we know that she got it out. It survived the destruction, which is another reason that the Asteri might not be prioritizing it too much. A, because they have a massive rebellion going on. B, because Rigelus the entire time was focused on the horn and the portal. And he is actively the entire time through Sky and Breath, we discussed this last episode a little bit, trying to get Bryce over to the Asteri.
So he has
archives.
other things on his mind.
He does.
And also, they may have just assumed that it was destroyed when the tank exploded and everything was lost. But
there were brimstone missiles coming towards the city.
Yes. But we do get confirmation that she manages to spirit it away somehow. So all of that knowledge is still out there somewhere.
But we don't know where it is.
We do not know
Sky
where.
And Breath. You want to talk about her character a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, she seems super menacing at first. She's definitely, you kind of wonder, you're like, is this character going to be a bad guy or a good guy?
And it's so funny you said, because the entire time reading Earth and Blood and Sky and Breath, we're constantly reminded of how afraid of Jesiba everybody else is. And you just don't get that between her and Bryce. Bryce is always yeah, she might turn me into an animal, but she doesn't actually ever seem to be afraid of Jesiba. She knows that Jesiba is in her corner.
And Jesiba seems to either have a soft spot for Bryce or is playing a game of 4D chess that we're not quite privy to yet. Because every single time both. Bryce asks her for anything,
she delivers.
She always answers when Bryce calls.
Always.
And she gave Bryce an Arcasian amulet. But these are priceless. It's not even a matter of how much they cost. It is the fact that this protection cannot be replicated. There are only a certain number of them in the world. I don't care how valuable your assistant is to your business. You don't need to protect their person.
You don't give them a $3 million mock
with a
amulet.
priceless piece of magical
you don't give
protection.
them death marks. You don't get, well, the death mark was technically stolen, but whatever. You don't give.
But again, like Jesiba, if Jesiba really was this horrible, dark, menacing, evil, scary character, she would have just turned Bryce into a toad.
Yeah, and we wouldn't even have this book series.
Right. So she
evidence of that.
purchased Lahaba and Syrinx. They're living nice lives. I think that she presents as this very severe, so in sync.
We're so in sync.
This very cold, aloof, menacing character. But by the end of book 1 that like
she's an ally.
At minimum and I could see her coming through in a big way.
I think that she's going to play a big part before the end of the series. We don't know what's going to happen in book 3 or whose point of view we're going to get. But I agree with your notes in that she 100% has huge anti-Asteri tendencies and is going to be helping the rebellion in a big way. Although we don't really know the status of the rebellion. It's like we don't fully agree with everything the rebels are doing in Sky and Breath. In fact, people like Pippa, big demerit for all the shit that she pulls with leopard shifters. Oh my God, it's so sad.
But isn't that kind of the way, in war, there's very rarely
the two sides that one side is correct.
Completely evil and one side that is completely correct. Once war starts, it's just bad.
Yeah.
All around. And it's always the innocents who suffer the most. Mm-hmm. So I think Jesiba has been harboring what she knows and what she possesses for a very long time.
Yeah.
Waiting until because that's a card you can only play once.
And you say long time, and I know that somewhere in the books it says that Jesiba is 400 years old. But
a 400-year-old enchantress.
Here's the thing. We know so little of her upbringing.
Shrouded in mystery.
It is shrouded in mystery. So there is this scene that I read this theory on Reddit, and then I cannot stop thinking about it. Where she sees Bryce's starlight for the first time at the end of Earth and Blood, and she looks like she's seen a ghost because she.
And we know that Bryce's starlight is very significant because Aidas says, "I remember
that starlight.
That starlight specifically."
And it's Taya's. Thea's.
I like Taya.
I like Taya as well. Also because I knew a Taya growing up, so that's what we're going to call it. She recognizes
We're going to be
Bryce's...
crushed if SJM gives another interview and says Taya. It's going to be like Rigulous all over again.
There is a world in which Jesiba was just also because of all of the information that she has about stuff that was around the time of the First Wars. Like, just... I don't know how it would play out, but I feel like somehow Jesiba is connected to Taya in some way, and that kind of tracks because we know Aidas was in love with Taya, which we'll talk about more, and we know that she and Aidas are very close because of the prologue,
and she defected to the House of Flame and Shadow, which has connections to Hell. Like, that we know that for a fact.
Something is afoot.
I think it's a theory that has very solid footing, that there is a connection between Jesiba and Hell in some way. And I definitely agree with you that she's older than 400 years old.
Yeah, I just don't see that her being like born in Midgard and staying here. Like it's impossible in my brain, but perhaps not. But the whole thing with why have the Asteri not tried to destroy this library or take it away from her now that they know that she has it? This is the most pressing question for me.
I think Rigulous feels that his ultimate victory is nigh because now he knows how to open the gates back up.
Or does he know that she knows something? That I think that she already knew everything. I agree with your notes here that she already knew everything that Danica was doing, everything that Danica found out and we found out about the Asteri at the end of Sky and Breath. I think Jesiba already knew all of that.
And so
she's been keeping her cards, and they're scared of going after her because I'm sure she has some kind of failsafe locked in.
Mm. And to risk going after her is to risk the exposing
exactly, and exposing themselves.
Because up until the summit, nobody else knew. Besides, I think Bryce probably suspected, and Danica apparently was poking around in there. And they eliminated Danica.
Yeah. Why was Danica spending so much time on that? It's all just too much. What do you want to do next?
I mean, just it comes back to her motivations, right? I mean, she's clearly not a law-abiding, faithful subject of the Asteri. As far as we know, she's not actively participating in the rebellion. She's not connected with Ophion.
I think that Jesiba is good.
What?
I think she is like one of the good guys who's been pulling strings for a long time.
I totally agree. I think she has been around for much longer than 400 years. I think that is why
maybe in a different form
she is behaving the way she is behaving. And I think, like Aidas, she has been waiting a very, very, very long time, even by a Veneer's standards, for the right opportunity to use what she knows to help try and overthrow the Asteri.
Especially since she's been giving Bryce's little pieces of what Bryce needs to find out what she needs to know in order to make it to the end of Sky and Breath. Mm-hmm. She is literally very sneakily laying a pathway for Bryce to discover her powers.
And the fact that Jesiba Roga, who is apparently very famous, hires Bryce Quinlan, a half-human, half-fae, fresh out of undergrad.
And as far as I can tell, the entire business is only 2 employees.
She didn't need an assistant.
No.
And so I think Jesiba, I mean, we've already agreed on this. She's going to play a pivotal role. Could there be more to it that she's actually literally related to everything that has happened in Midgard in the past? Was she there? We don't know.
There are theories that say that Jesiba came from Prithian, potentially. Has she been working for thousands of years, putting these pieces together to overthrow the Asteri? There's theories that she could be somehow connected to Taya and to Aidas, and allegedly they might have had a child at some point.
We're going to talk about this a lot in the next 2 episodes. So
strap in, people.
Yeah.
And then one last thing that I had about Jesiba was that just while I was doing some Googling, we know that SJM loves, especially in Crescent City, to use Greek and Norse mythology.
Just lots of mythologies and religions.
In the entire series.
And she takes a lot of her... She's very, very careful and intentional with names.
She does nothing by accident.
And very careful and intentional with her phrasing and just her words. She crafts everything very, very carefully.
Mm-hmm. That being said, when I Googled, the equivalent of the Greek goddess that has Jesiba's powers is Circe, spelled Circe.
And she was technically referred to as a witch, which makes sense because Jesiba was born a witch.
Correct. And Circe is, in Greek mythology, the granddaughter of the Titan Taya. Insert eye emojis here. What does it mean?
Just like episode 2.
What does it mean? I don't know. Yep. So that's pretty much it from me. I'm on Jesiba. Do you want to transition to Aidas, or do you have anything else you want to add?
Just one other thing, and Jesiba and Aidas really do tie in together, I think. And I guess as a transitional note, at the end of Earth and Blood, as they are parting ways after they have their very cryptic little exchange,
very
that had
cryptic,
all of us ripping our hair out, I was fine. I personally was fine.
You're always fine.
I'm always fine. She says, "Don't fuck us over again, Aidas." And he says, "I don't plan to." It's like, well, did you plan to before?
I know. Interesting.
I have questions.
And then she says, and I think we mentioned this in episode 2.
Well, and they discuss Hunt's father. And they do use the word father. They do not use the word sire. Which is significant.
Yes. And she says that you knew the male better than I.
Aidas says that to her.
Yeah.
So Jesiba has a lot that I would like for her to share.
And that's a common theme with other characters in Crescent City.
Yes. And
perhaps Aidas.
We'll just go right into Aidas. Aidas, the prince of the chasm, which is the 5th level of hell, as we talked about in our first episode. 7 levels
as a reminder,
of hell.
It is in increasing order of scariness: the hollow, the trench, the canyon, the ravine, the chasm, the abyss, and the pit.
Yes, and the pit is where Apollyon, the Star Eater,
although Apollyon
dwells.
Doesn't sound scary, but is scary.
Apollyon has Illyrian wings.
Yes.
And we're not going to say anything else about it because we don't have time.
Okay, sorry. So he is also over 15,000 years old, though, Aidas.
The Princes of Hell are, I think, the oldest characters we've met.
Besides, like, maybe the Bone Carver and its
They're
siblings.
on that level of, like, they predate...
the world as we know it.
They predate life.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a great way of saying it.
But I think also, because hell is another realm. It's not part of Midgard.
No, and I believe it is a planet.
Oh, but see, that's what's so cool about, we don't know. Like, planets make me think of Star Wars.
I know, but I think that one of the demons says that it's a planet at one point. Regardless, it is separate from Midgard. He, I guess, only makes physically a handful of appearances throughout the books. So that's
well, and we all get duped. So we
get duped.
So Aidas has appeared to us in these two books in two forms. One is the white cat with blue eyes, and the second is we only see him in his humanoid form once, and Hunt describes him as a slender, pale-skinned pretty boy.
Oh, Hunt. He's so charming. Has such a way with words.
Yes. And here's sort of the rest of what at least we think we know. Because in book 2, the cat appears again, and we all think that it's Aidas, and come to find out at the end it was actually Rigulus impersonating Aidas.
Pulling puppet strings.
I didn't realize that the Asteri had shape-shifting abilities. That doesn't seem right to me.
I'm the same, but I think that they must be able to kind of the way that Bryce kind of has all this power now. We talked about that a little bit last episode. Maybe because they are feeding off of people's first light. They maybe have powers that...
I know they...
Well, we don't know a lot about the Asteri.
They're so parasitic, and typically parasitic creatures in fantasy do not have... There's nothing that they do. There's nothing about their power that they gain that is natural. And shifting in this world is a natural thing that is a part of just what kind of veneer someone is, or apparently what kind of prince of hell you are. For creatures, for beings like the Asteri, it just for some reason doesn't fit in my mind with the type of beings that they would be able to do something as simple and organic as just shift into a cat.
No, I get that, and I like that note. It doesn't seem or shift
do
into
do I believe that he
form.
could have had that Rigulus could have in some other way been present in the apartment and overheard and seen and witnessed everything that happened in there through all of Sky and Breath? Yes.
Well, also there is evidence in ACOTAR of people who have shape-shifting abilities being to projecting that ability onto other people. Think like Tamlin at the beginning of ACOTAR. All of his subjects weren't wolf shifters. He shifted them into wolves and sent them over the wall. So maybe that, I don't know.
Because we know very little. We know that the Asteri are very powerful, but I think that's just because they're harboring so much of other
people's first light
power that they have stolen because they are parasites. Yep. And just typically a parasitic creature has to feed off of others because it doesn't have any power really of its own.
TBD. We know that Aidas hates the Asteri.
Deeply.
Big time. In fact, was involved perhaps in trying to overthrow them the first time.
Well, we know he was. We know he was for sure. And this is the information that we get from him across both books. In the first book, I think we learn
that he can shapeshift in the first, and that he can come through the rift, but only in his animal form. He only comes in his humanoid form if he's being summoned, which is what Bryce does illegally in her apartment with the obsidian salt.
Casually.
Just because that's who Bryce Quinlan is. She does illegal shit to find stuff out.
Yes.
Much to Hunt's chagrin.
Right. But it is also worth noting here that was not the first time Bryce and Aidas have interacted. Aidas, in his cat form, just casually to be at the Oracle the same day that Bryce Adelaide Quinlan went as a 13-year-old girl to hear her fortune. And after Bryce's asshole sire, who we are going to talk about shortly, was very mean to her about it.
So mean.
Aidas.
Autumn King can fuck off.
Aidas,
not really, 'cause I'm in, by
in
the
his
way.
cat form, really kind of, he comforted her and he said to her, don't let them see you cry.
And he sat with her until she stopped crying.
Sounds very not like something you would
Sounds
expect
like
from a prince of the pit.
And it sounds like he has a lot of personal investment in what happens to Bryce Quinlan.
And he's
a
been aware of
massive
her
soft
for a
spot for
very
her.
long time. Almost like he's been watching her whole life.
Yeah, this is just so sus. There is no way that was a chance meeting. Again, Aidas, I think that he's been watching over her for a while. Same thing with Jesiba.
Sort of like a really creepy
and we
guardian
know,
angel.
Right. And we know that Jesiba and Aidas have a friendship. And so it would make sense to me that they're both watching over Bryce in a way.
And that just, again, begs the question, why? I guess the answer to why would be because they knew the truth about who she was and what she would eventually mean for the world. And then the next question that begs is, how did they know that? If she's been hidden away her whole life in Nidaros.
Which begs the question, what does Ember Quinlan know? Oh, so many questions.
There's so many questions.
I'm super excited to hopefully find out more about the Aidas and Taya relationship in the next book. I hope we get something more about it because there is so much murkiness that happened at the time. The history is dubious at best with the First Wars. Like we've really tried to piece it together best we can, and we went over that in episode 1.
Yes.
But like even so, these texts that
Well, and like we said, I mean, we still don't even know. We want to believe Aidas's side of the story.
but apparently he's fucked people over in the past.
And it's all word of mouth. And even within the Library of Parthos, like if some of those are journals or firsthand accounts of the events that went down, it makes me think of Moria when they find the book of the dwarf who was just literally writing in his last moments. Like I would imagine a book like that existing in the Library of Parthos. But even in those firsthand accounts, again, like those are written by people, and those people can sometimes have motivations to not recount the truth. And so
we know that the history of Midgard is entirely falsified from the Asteri, pretty much.
Pretty much. And there's just so much that's still not confirmed. I mean, I think Aidas's side of the story definitely has more truth to it than the Asteri, but we also don't understand the full extent of Aidas's motivations either.
No, we
because
don't.
His brethren in hell seem to have slightly different
motivations,
perspectives on how things should go. And
who are the named brothers that we know of now? It's Apollyon the Star Eater. What I'm so excited about is that because so many of the theories that are out there
I'm
about
Googling it in real time.
Amazing. So many of the theories that are about Aidas and Taya hinge on the fact that they had some kind of child that no one ever knew about. And that would explain a lot of the theories about Ember Quinlan and
Thanatos.
It's giving Thanos.
I mean, yeah. I hope he's not really big and pink though, because that would be weird.
Purple with like a gross chin that looks like a pair of you-know-whats. Thanos' chin is gross.
It is gross. Thanos is gross.
Thanatos. Okay, so it's
Thanatos.
Apollyon, Thanatos, and
Aidas. And Thanatos is nasty. He's very scary. And Apollyon is menacing and he makes me nervous, but he at least seems to be like allied with Aidas.
Yeah, and we know Apollyon we've only met through people's dreams, which is interesting.
Yes.
And we know that Hunt is receptive to that because Hunt was bred to be receptive to demon kind.
But he comes to Bryce in a dream
He comes to Bryce as well in a dream. So that is how he is presenting himself to our core characters.
And he has Illyrian wings. He has
big
leathery
and leathery
wings. But again, it's different from because Aidas seems as though he's actively trying to help them. He says the armies of hell wait for your command. Mm-hmm. He tells Bryce that she is supposed to build up her powers and then summon the armies of hell, and that they will answer to her, and they will be hers to wield against the Asteri. I'm not getting that vibe from Apollyon.
It sounds like the brothers don't always talk to each other or communicate.
Not very much communication going on in a land ruled by men.
Shocker.
Apollyon says he's been waiting for a worthy opponent, like a worthy adversary. So again, it just seems to, from Aidas' side of the story, he's like, no, Hel and Taya and everybody it was all of us against the Asteri. But it doesn't sound to me like he and Apollyon were necessarily like, they may have been allied by the bigger, like just by a common enemy, but it doesn't sound to me like they're all a big, dark, scary family.
A lot of the sibling connections in the SJM verse aren't exactly warm and fluffy.
That's true, but that's a pretty sweeping statement for Aidas to make, to say the armies of hell.
Oh wait,
like he's like, is he pledging all seven
rings
of hell with very depths. Dante's Inferno, by the way.
Well, it's all sevens.
And I still have questions, and I'm still slightly sus of Aidas.
And I think that's smart.
I think Aidas has his own agenda that we don't fully understand yet.
I would agree with that.
And I think it aligns with getting the Asteri out of the way. And this is the question that comes up for our characters a lot, starting in the second book, is what would happen then? Let's say we get rid of them, so then what?
Chaos.
So then who's it going to be? Because I'm willing to wager that Apollyon and Aidas have different opinions about
on who should be ruling. I guess we'll find out.
That would be wild, actually, if it turned out, like, what if it was an ACOWAR situation where, like, in book 3, the Asteri get overthrown, and then we're like, oh, wow, okay. And it turns out that the real bad guys are Hel.
Dude, I don't know.
And then they have to defeat Hel also.
Well, what if it's like there are so many theories about this. So what if it's a situation where the world Midgard somehow gets just destroyed in the conflict while this is going on, and they have to go
They all have to migrate into Prythian
to live in the Dusk Court, ruled by potential High King.
They're gonna have to give up. They're gonna have to give up their tech. Either that or modernize Prythian, I guess. Can you imagine having to teach the Van Sarah boys
how to use
about
cell
phones?
Amazing stuff.
I really feel like there would be some incredible temper tantrums that would happen with that.
Trying to teach Cassian how to use a cell phone?
I would just have none of it. He'd be like, no. Either that or he would just send dick pics to Nexta all the time.
All the time. That's what he would do. Oh, amazing.
Okay, I think it's worth noting
that
I hope that it turns out that Aidas and Apollyon are good guys from Hel. You know, we all love a good bad boy. Mm-hmm. And I do also just have to say, in conclusion, that if Aidas really has been waiting 15,000 years to avenge the death of his love, who was a warrior queen, like, that's hot. Hot. Yeah. So I guess that makes me Team Hel. I stand the demon princess.
I think that Aidas' actions, for me, Apollyon sounds hot. I don't even know. If he's giving Illyrian, we know that I think Illyrians are attractive. So maybe that's where that's coming from. I don't remember.
We know you're more of a leathery wing girl than
a feathery
wing girl. Oh no, they rhyme.
Are you team leathery or feathery? Oh my god.
I'm unwell. I'm not.
Oh wow, I'm going to use that all the time from now on. So thank you for that, Jessica.
Leathery
and on that note, I think we should
feathery.
pivot to our favorite.
I think that would be wise.
Unexplained and mysterious character of this episode, which is the Autumn King.
I don't even think he counts as morally gray. He's just a dick.
Yeah. Well, No, he has done some horrendous stuff, and like it's crazy because you get moments of him because you get more communicate. Do you get more communication with him in Sky and Breath or Earth and Blood? It's like equally.
I think you
minimal.
I think you get a little bit more. For me, in Earth, that scene at the end of Earth and Blood when he comes to see her took on a whole new meaning for me when I reread it.
Me too. Like, he has these moments of compassion.
He literally left his path, which he never does.
He never, was it 5 roses? 5?
Fyro.
But is the estate called 5?
No, the neighborhood that they're in is 5 Roses. He leaves his super secure,
his compound, if you will.
He never does that.
No.
And he comes to see her, and he says to her, this is so typical of me. This is actually my last note. He says to her,
I found it. You may be like your mother,
yes,
but you are more like me than you realize, and that is not a good thing. But
is that just him being a manipulative bad dad, or is he like?
No, listen. Yes, he is a manipulative person, 100%.
That's not a helpful thing to say. Like, if you're genuinely trying to be helpful, then like say something else.
I agree with you. No, so here's what we know about the Autumn King.
Let's start
over. He is a little over 400 years old.
Einar
Danan. He is the king. I guess the
Einar. Not a very menacing name. Although it did make me think a little bit of Lord of the Rings for some reason.
Yeah, like Éomer or Éowyn.
I think, and like the Valar.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Maybe.
Einar just seemed like a name that would be somewhere in the Tolkien realm.
But
I digress.
He leads all of the Fae.
He is the king of the Valbaran Fae.
Not the Avalon Fae. Which is important because apparently these two houses, if you will, just like the Montagues and the Capulets, are divided and they hate each other. But he has a vested interest in making sure that he wants Bryce to go to Avalon. He wants her to marry into the Avalon family.
Because even the mists of Avalon are so mysterious and magical that even the Asteri cannot pierce.
And he says, I'm trying to protect you by sending you to Avalon.
And I do believe that.
Me too. Because we know one thing about the Autumn King, it's that he is obsessed with lineage and with ancestry.
And protecting the family line.
Yeah.
And furthering the family line. Now, why? That's a big question for all of our characters, if you're noticing a theme. What are their motivations? Why are they doing what they're doing? And the other thing that we know about the Autumn King is that he is spending a lot of time researching, not necessarily just his own bloodline, but the origins of the Fae in general. It is common knowledge to everyone in Midgard that the Fae did not originate in Midgard. That they
came over during the First War.
It was the crossing.
The crossing.
And the Autumn King is and I would imagine that this is some kind, I feel like there was knowledge passed down from king to king, and that's why.
We don't know.
And that's kind of because this has been his obsession that just kind of defines who he is, like his whole life. That's really all he's ever doing.
He literally never leaves his compound. He sits there in his office conducting experiments.
And when Bryce goes into the archive, the Asteri's archives, she looks around when she goes into the room with all of it's not a planetarium because that's the domed thing that you look up at. But he has a model of like the universe and the planets, and she says it's almost exactly the same as the one that's in the Asteri's archives. I think it's just a different size.
Now, is that model that's in the Autumn King's office? For me, it reminded me of the model that's in Reese's office in his study.
I don't remember.
He has a university planety thing in his office as well.
Oh, does he?
Yes. Oh, but he's not abusive and mean the same way that the Autumn King is.
No. We might have some notes for Reese every once in a while, but he does not do that.
Yes, exactly.
I think he's going to be a much better dad.
Yes. He has the power of flame.
Yes.
Pyrokinesis, I think. is what that's called. Anyway,
yes.
he can wield flame, which sounds like some other characters that we
Associated with autumn.
in a world called Prithian.
Yes.
And of course, all you have to do is type in Autumn King theory into Reddit.
I think at this point, if you've read both books, I don't even think it's a theory to say that the Fae in Midgard came from Prithian.
Correct.
Like, I wouldn't even call that a theory anymore.
Well, we know it because of the swords and the sword and the dagger that were reunited when Bryce went back to Prithian and they went back to its home.
Now, the question for me remains, so what is the difference then between the Valbaran Fae and the Avalon Fae? And how do those two bloodlines fit into the history of Prithian?
Yeah, and if you read some of like the main theories, the Avalon Fae come more from Rhys's side of
right,
yeah,
because that's Rune's bloodline as well through his mother. Now, if we're talking about the Autumn King and his similarities and differences to his two children, offspring, one of the offspring bears a
striking resemblance.
It's Sarah goes out of her way through several different characters. Rune talks about it. Bryce herself acknowledges it begrudgingly. The Autumn King acknowledges it. Even Hunt says once the reveal happens, he's like, I can't believe that I didn't put it together. She makes it very clear to us many times that there are just really, really, really strong resemblances and strong connections between Bryce and the Autumn King. They have extremely similar scents, nutmeg specifically. Yeah. Although the Autumn King also smells of ash, and I think Bryce also smells of like lilac or lavender.
I think Jasmine is someone else.
I'm almost positive it's either it's lilac or lavender. And Rune also notes many times throughout House of Sky and Breath that Bryce like reminds him of their father in the way, like it's more than just, so Bryce and her father have the same eyes, the same skin tone, the same hair.
But then mannerisms.
And the same temper. But Rune is struck many times and notes many times that their mannerisms, the way she speaks, the looks that she gives people,
the temper,
her presence in a room when she decides to
something is going to be the way it is. I mean, we know there's two direct lines of Fae. There's the line from the Avalon, which I think has Taya's Starlight in it. And then there is the line of the Valbaran. I wonder if that's in an effort to, Bryce is supposed to be this fated person almost.
Oh, well, Bryce is for sure a fated person.
Combine those.
I think we have yet to really understand the significance of the fact that Bryce is the genetic progeny of the Autumn King, which begs the question for me. On this reread, I really started to question whether or not the Autumn King actually has two biological children because of all of the emphasis that is placed on Bryce's resemblance and Rune's lack of one. Rune has as a drop of starlight, and we covered this, I think, when we did the deep dive on Rune.
Powers to do with flame.
All of his powers and his physical appearance are all from his mother's line, it would seem. And knowing how apparently...
And I wonder if the Autumn King doesn't know that Rune isn't his child.
I think he does. And
the only reason that and that would explain his hatred for Rune and his abuse of Rune, but would also explain why he made Rune very publicly his son, because he needs to have...
He needed an heir. And it's very similar to the situation in the Autumn Court with Baron, where if you acknowledge that your wife had an affair or that you have a son who is not really your son, that makes you look weak. And the Autumn King was not ever going to put himself in a position to do that.
Right.
And I think that's another reason why when Ember Quinlan came along, he was so intent upon keeping her. And
I read a theory about the Autumn King and Ember that I had to use your words, like lie down afterwards. That actually they are mates. And the reason
Oh my God, I just am covered in goosebumps.
And the reason that explains him like looking
Oh my God,
after
Isabel, I think that might be true.
And the children of mates are supposed to be more powerful. It was
they're mates for a reason.
And think of it. Reese is the
Oh my
child
God,
of mates.
I believe it. I believe it.
The child of mates.
I believe it.
And you know how women don't feel the mating bond as much, if at all.
Oh my God, maybe Lucian is the child of mates too.
Oh.
Because everything always has to go back to Lady Autumn and Helion.
So furthermore, you know how males go into the frenzy as described by Cassie and
I think
Reese?
This is absolutely correct. How have we not talked about this
I don't
before?
know. And he probably hurt her during his frenzy in some way. I don't think we don't know what happened. There is
and
such
he
a big
goes out of
question
his
mark
way. The Autumn King goes out of his way
to say
as feeble
and loved Ember. He loved her, and I believe him.
I believe him too. And that does not mean that we condone any of his actions.
In any way whatsoever.
Sarah said it, and we're saying it too. He is a bad guy. Mm-hmm. He's a bad guy who has the capacity and has had the opportunity to do the right thing, and he doesn't.
Yeah.
And he doesn't. But his story is not over.
Nope.
And you and I both, I like to think our collective family here at The Greatest Genre, we are always here for a redemption arc.
Totally. I want Tamlin to have one. I am on Team Tamlin. I mean, to be clear, I am Team Feyre and Reese, but I am on Team Tamlin redemption arc.
I think two things can exist
be true
in the world. And so I think as far as the Autumn King's story, I think that there is much, much more to his relationship with Bryce and with Ember that we are going to find out about. Mm-hmm. And I also think we're going to find out that there is actually not a biological connection and therefore a bloodline connection between him and Rune. And then, so that means that if the Autumn King isn't Rune's dad, who is? Which is a question for another time. But it is a question that I am very hopeful will get asked eventually.
Yes.
Maybe by Bryce. After she comes back from Prithian and goes, I met this guy.
Looks a lot like you.
Dead ringer for you. Like, could be your twin.
Well, that's my theory that Rune's mother
is
Reese's sister.
This is a big theory. Yeah. This has been a theory that's been talked about a lot. I'm back and forth on it. I think it would be really cool if it were true. But, I'm going to put myself in Sarah's hands.
I mean, we trust her.
I'm trying to. I trust her more than I trust Rebecca Yarros.
I understand.
Now, that's for freaking
I understand.
Sure. The Autumn King shows up at the summit, and this was just a final little note that I wanted to include in here. Oh. And he wears an onyx crown, and it is described as, quote, a piece of night, even in the light of the morning, end quote. And I'm just wondering if that was also an artifact that came over from Prithian with the Fae when they crossed into Midgard. And if so, who wore it before?
A crown of
onyx, of night. Because the High Lords do not wear crowns.
Perhaps the High King Fane, or Taya, the High Queen.
Could have been Taya's crown.
I believe onyx. A lot of objects came over. I also think the horn is an object that came over from Prithian.
Oh yeah, yes.
Especially, I think it was what you sent me. It was.
I think it is.
I think when Nesta has her vision that Lanthys gives her.
Yes,
she can see like a fourth thing, but it's in shadow.
Totally the horn. Yeah. That is a theory that I absolutely buy into.
So many goosebumps.
It's going to be so great. But yeah, I mean, I think all three of these characters, I think the Autumn King, I think Aidas, and I think Jesiba, what they do all have in common is that I think they have a lot more knowledge of the history that has gone on in this world that the rest of the characters don't. Mm-hmm. Like even the characters we're going to talk about next, Ethan and Fury and Lydia, I think they are very important characters that also have a lot of gray area or definitely a lot of potential, but I don't think they have the same wealth of knowledge as the three characters that we talked about today.
No, and there's a reason that you chose to put them in the same episode, and I think you were dead on.
Yeah, because I think so excited. And I think that the knowledge that they have is what is going to be necessary for our sort of young frontline. Aidas and Jesiba and the Autumn King are not going to be the ones who really fight this battle. But I think they are going to give Bryce and Hunt and
The
Rune
tools
and Lydia
the information that they need.
what they need in order to be able to do it.
I agree.
And so, I do think we have time for
think
our
so too.
honorable
We're doing
mentions.
so well. Okay, honorable mentions.
I think we should do Hypaxia first.
Okay.
Because our other honorable mention really deserves to just everything.
We maybe could have done like a fourth character that knows a lot but isn't saying a lot, but she's just, I think that you picked the right three.
Yeah.
The fact that she was basically raised by dead people.
She was raised by ghosts. So Hypaxia is, of course, the queen of the witches. We meet her for the first time without really knowing exactly who she is, but we hear about her because
she's just a med witch at first.
She is Rune's betrothed. And I was rooting for her and Rune. Like, I'm here for he and Lydia to be mates in Endgame. I'm here for it, but I was a little sad.
Yeah, because she's so warm and
I felt like they had chemistry. Like, Sarah really threw me off for that one.
I just also really liked that right away you could tell that she was not on board with the Asteri. Like that scene where she's having a conversation with Hunt.
She looks at Hunt and she says, "If I removed,
it was after the Medwitch
if
scene.
I removed it, what would you do? Would you kill those who had placed it on your brow?"
And I remember just reading that and I just got them again. Chills all down my body.
That scene, I mean, and that's the reason why I really wanted to make sure she gets a shout out because she was the X factor at the summit. Because without her, Hunt would never have killed Sandriel. They never would have gotten into that helicopter. They never would have made it back because he would have been, he was the only being in the room powerful enough to do that.
Now, just a quick question about the removal of Hunt's crown. Was the only reason she was able to do that was because a witch had put it on?
Yes.
Oh, fuck.
Yes.
Jessica.
Yeah, no, that's why we're in a very bad situation. It's very bad. It's about as bad as it could ever be. That's where we are.
Okay.
I loved Hypaxia from the get-go, and I loved her scenes with Bryce. I had forgotten about that in Sky and Breath. And then, of course, I am also very much very much here for her and Celestina, and I hope they get to live happily ever after. But
I'm like less here for that one just because we don't know what Celestina's true character is right now.
I think Celestina is not as brave as we would like her to be.
Yeah, I think that's fine. But I think she deeply loves Hypaxia.
I think she has a good heart, and I think that I don't think she has the courage to stand against the Asteri.
And I don't think we can knock people for that because people literally die.
Yeah, you have to be a little bit insane to do the things that our main characters are doing, and that's why we read about it in fantasy books, and we don't do it in our real life.
Great point.
But Hypaxia, with her and Rune, I got a little bit excited at first because I was like, oh my god, it's an arranged marriage trope where they actually fall in love. I thought it was going to be forced marriage.
Oh, it's one of our favorites.
And it's so good. And I was so excited. So I was a little bummed when I realized that was not the direction these characters were going in. But I'm excited for them. And I hope they both find love and happiness.
I wonder how much we're going to get of her in the next book.
I'm worried about her. We haven't gotten an official POV from her yet.
I also don't know why. Like, also the fact that she's just allowed to be walking. Like, isn't that incredibly illegal what she did, taking off Hunt's crown?
Well, the Asteri have decided to be magnanimous because Micah. It's a bad look for them that Micah,
that governor
was so blatantly. Here's the other thing. I don't think Micah was trying to use the horn to end the rebellion. I think Micah was trying to use the horn to open up the armies of hell and overthrow the Asteri because
that's what he said he was doing, I think.
No,
right?
he said he wanted to use it to end the rebellion, to crush the humans. No, I don't think that's true.
TBD with
Hypaxia. I don't think that's true in the slightest. And so I think the Asteri, because the Asteri didn't want to cover up that 2 people had murdered their archangels, which are supposed to be their instruments on Earth. So instead, they had to sort of do a little PR stunt and be like, we have decided to free Hunt Athalar for his courageous actions saving the city from the demons, right?
But it's like but we're still watching you and don't fuck with us situation.
Right. And I think they sent their message to who they wanted to send it to. I think they are but remember, in House of Sky and Breath, Hypaxia's coven is like starting to turn against her.
Yeah.
I think that has the Asteri written all over it. The way that they move is in such a way that nobody attributes things directly to them. They're just the benevolent, all-powerful, godlike beings that sit at the top of everything.
That's evident and at the end of Sky and Breath when we figure out that this entire sequence was basically Rigelus pulling strings from the very beginning. They wanted her there to open the portals anyway because they want back to Prithian. Right.
But I do think it's a good point to mention, and just kind of bringing this back full circle, that Hypaxia was educated by ghosts. She was kept far away from Midgard, not unlike Bryce's upbringing. And all of her tutors have knowledge about the world before the Asteri.
Totally.
So I think she also can maybe be folded into this group of characters who have that very, very important context that maybe the rest of our main characters don't. And also, I had forgotten this too, and we'll get into this more in the next episode when we talk about Lydia, but she and the Hind are half-sisters.
Yes.
They have the same
Super
mother.
important note, actually.
They have the same mother, but different fathers.
But the Hind's father was a powerful stag shifter, I think, and Hypaxia's father
was a necromancer.
Yes, which is very mysterious.
Scary. All right, and our second and final, and perhaps the most important shout out we will ever give,
we will not cry.
I might. Is
Lily
Lehaba.
Oh my god.
The most courageous fire sprite that has ever existed on the page.
I am with my friends. And I am not afraid.
I haven't
the reread
ugly cried in a reread or in anything like that.
Anything.
I was
distraught,
sobbing,
distraught. There are actually tear stains on my book pages from that scene.
Had tears. They were rolling down my face, pooling here under my chin, and then just like dripping down into my lap. It was not cute. I'm very happy I was alone when I was reading this, and it was. Her sacrifice is so courageous, and the way that Sarah writes that scene, I don't even think you're really going back. I think you're watching it on the screens in the summit, right? But damn if it doesn't feel like you're there.
Oh, it feels like you're right there.
And it is just, I mean, I am covered in goosebumps right now.
And it's even more.
And Hunt stands up.
Oh my God, when they all stand up
and they honor.
She was a member of the house.
Of her house. Of their house.
Yeah, and the entire act is made even more special by the fact that it was her first act as a freed person.
When Bryce turns around and she says to Lehaba, you're free. I bought you from Jesiba and I freed you. And Lehaba looks at her and she goes, I know. I looked in your desk a week ago. And then let it be said that my first act of freedom was to help my friends.
She is one of my favorite characters in the entire SJM verse.
Because you know what else? Like, Bryce was so alone for those 2 years. And Lehaba was with her there every day. Every single day. And she loves Bryce so much. And she saw her through the darkest parts of Bryce's life when even Bryce's friends, besides Juniper, had left her. And I think the courage that it takes to decide to love and care about somebody even when you're not even considered a real free person is just the purity of that. It should make you cry.
Yeah. If you didn't cry at the end of Earth and Blood,
I encourage you to look into therapy.
But I don't know what made it so much more powerful on maybe it's because you knew it was coming, and so you were paying closer attention to it.
For me, I think that's definitely true. And on the first read of anything, I'm so anxious that I'm just like, oh my God, like, big plot line. I need to understand how all this shakes out. And so on the reread, I appreciated her presence so much more. I mean, she's literally a light,
and
right?
It's like that storyline that we love so much. The smallest person can make a difference because of her sacrifice. The rest, Bryce was able to go on, and she was able to kill Micah, and we see it in stories all the time. Like, It's Frodo in the ring.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yes.
Harry Potter killing Voldemort. It's like all of these seemingly normal, insignificant even characters can just make the biggest difference.
Yeah.
And her story is so pure.
It's incredible. And she just brings, it's so fitting, right, that she is a fire sprite. She is just a little flame,
And
like
the scariest
embodied
way
as
she
a
could
as
die,
a person
too.
But it's all like, but she brings light and levity, and not just in the literal sense of being a fire sprite, but also in the sense like she makes you laugh.
She cheers you
makes
up.
and she makes Bryce laugh,
And she makes Hunt laugh. Her
Oh my
banter
God.
with Hunt.
Her banter with
and
her
her
banter
and her huge crush on Hunt
is so and
She
rude.
couldn't even- oh my God, and rude.
I love how boy crazy
And
Lahaba
I
is.
love how Hunt also just shamelessly flirts with her.
The scene, I had completely the first time he comes down into
And
the
his-
library and he looks at her and he's like, well, aren't you beautiful?
Yeah.
And us and Bryce all collectively go,
Oh my God.
I'm feeling things.
But I didn't think I would feel.
I wasn't ready for this. And she's so cute and she's so brave and strong and perfect.
And I love how she calls Hunt Alfie.
And doesn't she always call Prince Rune?
Yes.
And she hates Danica.
Hates Danica. She was mean to me.
So mean to me. I know. Like, oh, you're so terrible.
And her
Sometimes
favorite TV show,
Fangs and Bangs.
Oh, she is just truly one of SJM's greatest creations.
And I am so happy that we have more fire sprites.
I know, me too.
In Sky and Breath.
Honestly, that was healing for me because I hadn't forgotten about them, but like they're such small characters in Sky and Breath,
And they're just
but
so...
they bring exactly the same kind of levity to the scene that you need sometimes.
And I love that they just follow Tristan around.
That's the biggest crush on him.
It's just so great. I just love that they're just...
So you know how you're always saying it's really
It's like
sexist that we
super
don't have
sexist.
any female roommates. Rude. I have literally never said that.
What is happening? Oh, I don't
But
want
one day. I know, I'm
I just want
sad.
to keep talking about them. They're all so amazing. As a final closing note, rest in peace and every possible honor that can be given to
Lele.
literary characters who have given the ultimate sacrifice.
Yes. Well said. I feel like it's really insensitive to plug our handles right now.
Maybe we won't do it today.
Okay, I mean, I feel like you guys know by now what they are. Like Instagram, TikTok, the greatest genre.
This has been great, and we are so excited to talk about more characters next time. So be sure to come back because we are going to be diving deep into Fury Axtar.
Ethan Holstrom.
Ethan Holstrom.
Oh my God, I love him. He's
Cutie pie.
so hot.
Okay, I'm going to do it quick. Fury, Ethan, and Lydia. That's who we're doing next.
And we haven't decided our honorable mentions for them, but there will be some.
It's going to be a surprise. Okay, see you next time.
We'll see you guys next time.